So back to Selena, she goes to track her targets, and she finds them leaving on a ship with their families, and she is pissed. Okay, she finds Archer, okay, and he said that he had to warn him. It's like they have families. And she threatens to kill him. Okay, she threatens to kill him if she doesn't get more names. Okay, and yeah, go for it, girl. I mean, I get it. Families, you want to say, but at least just take the families. Just do. I don't know. I shouldn't be in this conversation. So during this time, for the next few days, Kale and Selena cannot keep their hands off of each other. They are just day in, day out, whenever they can find time, they are with each other. They are going to town, even so far as to having sex in a broom closet. They're going at it, man. Like two rabbits. They're kind of falling in love, and who can blame them? And so then Nehemia and Selena have their girl time, and Selena kind of says, hey, me and Kale are having a great time, and Nehemia's like, I'm so happy for you. I love that you guys are just falling in love and all that stuff. And then that's when the conversation kind of switches to a little bit more somber tone. And Nehemia tells Selena that the king wants her to speak to the rebels in Elway, and basically tell them to back down, which is absolutely insane and not something she wants to do and not something she should do. Are you kidding me? No. Nehemia knows that she can't leave Rifthold. There's some stuff that she needs to do in Rifthold, and she cannot leave yet. That's when Nehemia pleads with Selena to help her free Elway, and that freaks Selena out completely. Again, she doesn't want to be a part of something bigger than what she can control, and this is something bigger than what she can control. They end up having a fight where Nehemia ends it with calling Selena a coward. Some big words. They really have not had this big of a fight in ever. And so the next scene is in a third person view. It's not necessarily calling anybody by their real name, but just by their generic names. And it's between a princess and the queen. So this whole entire chapter, the vibes that are giving off of it is basically similar to The Force Awakens when Ben says, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And in a literary sense, very reminiscent of the image of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's praying to God saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. So there's that whole dynamic of the princess knowing she has to do something, and the queen is like, yes, you have to do this. There isn't another way type thing. The princess knows she needs to do something bigger than her, and she's going to accept it, which is very opposite of what Selena is doing. And the queen even says in the beginning, one of them has to break. So we know that there's more than one that's being talked about in this situation, and that could head this story. And the princess says, but the prince isn't ready yet. So we can assess from this chapter that Nehemia is the princess, Elena is the queen, and Dorian is the prince. But we can also get that the she that Elena and Nehemia are talking about is Selena. So this goes into the further theory of Selena wondering, why wasn't Dorian chosen? Dorian's a part of this too. What place, what position, or what role does Dorian play in all this? We know that Selena does, but what does Dorian do? On a hunting trip, the king tells Kale that he's going to have Nehemia question tomorrow, and needs Kale and the other soldiers to guard the room, which is so suspicious. Kale follows the king's orders and kind of believes that everything's going to be fine, because why would, if the guards were there, why would the king kill Nehemia or harm her in any way while they were there? Why would he do that? Kale intentionally doesn't tell Selena about Nehemia, and it makes him feel horrible. He is pit in his stomach at odds of what he should do, but he just doesn't tell her about what's going on, which is the worst. He fully believes that the king won't harm Nehemia at all. But after waking up with them in the middle of the night beside Selena, he takes a walk out in the gardens just to clear his head and all this stuff. He's abducted. Kayla is kidnapped, and they leave a ransom note for Selena, which she gets after she spends the day tracking her targets. And for her, it's very reminiscent of how she lost Sam, which is someone that she loved in the past. And we do get kind of little bits of information about him throughout the book, and of course the last book where she confesses to Dorian about Sam, not completely, but says that she lost Sam. That was who she loved first. But the note basically said someone had taken him and for her to come alone. And turns out that Kale was taken as bait for his kidnappers to get Celaena. She absolutely goes bonkers on the kidnappers, okay? Similar to how she unleashed her fury at the salt mines. Basically, that's how she was with the people who took Chaol. Archer shows up, okay, and tries to explain everything after Celaena killed so many of his men, and turns out Archer and Nehemia were working together. Who knew? And then, if that wasn't enough, Archer reveals that Chaol knew about the possible threats on Nehemia's life and her being questioned by the king, because they thought Chaol would question her, but it was the king who questioned her. And from this news, Celaena, she books it back to the palace, and this gets the attention of Dorian in the halls while she's going back, and he follows her. But when Celaena gets to Nehemia's room, she finds her brutally dead on her bed, along with a few of her guards as well. From seeing Nehemia's body and hearing Chaol say her name, she realized he had known about the threats and the king questioning her, and she felt betrayed by all this, which, like, girl, yeah, same. This is one of the things I was telling you, that Chaol sometimes does stupid stuff. But he's actually super useful, so we're just gonna go with that. But she felt betrayed by Chaol, and for good reason. I would too. And she attacks him, like wanting to kill him, attack him, like starts to claw at his face and give him scars on his face type thing. He tries to tell her that he's her friend, and she's like, no, you're my enemy. That's some strong words, and we're gonna get more into that, because that will come back around for something else. Celaena tries to kill Chaol, like with a sword, with a knife, tries to kill Chaol, but Dorian reaches out from far away, by the way, like is not in arm's length to Chaol, and his magic stops Celaena from killing Chaol. That's when Celaena's finally knocked out by a guard. So yeah, that was probably the best situation. And they ended up taking her to the dungeons, where she's like kind of down there for a few days just to get her anger out. They don't want her to kill anybody else type thing. I get it, guys. It's a hard situation. It's a hard position to be in. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And this is when Chaol tells Dorian about the whole situation, like tells him what's going on, tells him about how whenever Celaena left, she literally left like a moment before he did. He left like a few seconds after her, took a horse, and she still outran him and the horse. And he could not figure out how that was possible. We will, but he couldn't figure it out. Now, Chaol found out that the king did not kill Nehemia, but Chaol still had Nehemia's room guarded and can't figure out who did it. Like, how did someone slip past his guards? No one could have slipped past his guards, because his guards was guarding Nehemia's room the entire time. Like, what was going on? How did this person kill? It kind of reminds me of like a Sherlock Holmes case, but I can't remember which one, where like everything is locked from the inside. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's that whole case. That's what it reminds me of. Celaena then wakes up in the dungeons and talks with Kaltain, who is still in the dungeons, by the way. She's been in there for months. And that's not a laugh. That's just a, dear Lord, give this girl a bed type thing. You know what I mean? We see they share a misery. First, Kaltain is to marry Parrington and go with him to Morath. And she says she knows he has to have something in mind for her, but she doesn't know what it is. And that's kind of scary to figure out, yeah, because we know Parrington is a little evil prick. And that's when she makes the comments about her headaches, about getting worse and worse, and how the wings won't stop. And Celaena then makes the connection that Nehemia said her dreams have been filled with shadows and wings. Kaltain then says if they let her, meaning Celaena, out to make them pay. And then Celaena swears that she will make sure of it. And then she drinks the water that has sedatives in it, and she just wants to feel nothing for a while. She literally can't believe her best friend is dead, and the last thing her friend ever said to her was that she was a coward. It's such a brutal wake-up call for Celaena. This is a horrible rock bottom for her. 4 days pass, and Chaol tries to figure out what's going on, but Celaena's passed out on sedatives, and he's a gentleman and brings her back to her room. He knows that he can't ever come back to where they were. It's all because he made a mistake of not telling her what was going on. And what's really sad on top of that, just before he was kidnapped, he had already imagined marrying Celaena and having kids together and living somewhere far, far away from Adolin. And like, this is like a whole new heartbreak. He had imagined this entire future with her, and now it's completely gone, and they can't ever have that. Now, to break up the story, we do get a short scene of an unnamed slave in the mines of Calacola, and she hears the news of Princess Nehemia's death, and she turns to her overseer and begins to unleash her fury on him with her pickaxe. This scene in particular is like really, really good. I enjoy that we see an outside perspective of what's going on in the story. We're not just in this bubble. It's so good because it shows the effect of Nehemia's death and how Nehemia was hope for so many people. And I just want to read a little bit of the chapter. And then she heard it, the words that changed everything. Princess Nehemia is dead, assassinated by Adolin. The words were past her before she ever had time to swallow them. There was a scrape of leather against a rock. The overseer would tolerate the paused for only a few seconds longer before he started swinging. Nehemia's dead. She stared down at the pickaxe in her hands. She turned slowly to look into the face of her overseer, the face of Adolin. He cocked his wrist, pronged the whip ready. She felt her tears before she realized they were falling, sliding through 6 months' worth of filth. Enough, the words screamed through her, so loudly she began to shake. Silently, she began to recite the names of her dead, and as the overseer raised his whip, she added her name to the end of that list and swung her axe into his gut. I'm telling you, there's some really good, like, descriptive scenes of characters' reactions, like how they felt, and that's like such a good charged reaction that I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed how it fleshed out this story. Going back to what's going on in Rifthold, Chaol had guards watching over Celaena, making sure she wasn't going to go insane again and all that stuff, especially near Dorian. That's one of his main priorities, is to keep Dorian safe. And he's still trying to figure out his magic. But after a few days, Celaena realizes that the style of which Nehemia was killed, because she can't stop seeing it in her mind, it was not in the style of the king, but rather in the style of Grave. You remember Grave? He was in the King's tournament, and he was one of the champions in the tournament. He was sponsored by Minister Mullison and made it to the final 4, where he was beat by Celaena in a duel. That's the one where she was like, it's me, bitch, I'm Celaena Sarothian, I'm not Lilian Gordana type thing. Yeah, that was him. And Celaena goes down to the tomb to grab Damaris and heads out to kill Grave through the underground tunnel system because her room is being guarded by Chaol's men. She knows it. She heads to the vaults, which is kind of a grimy, scummy place. She asks the barkeep about Grave, you know, where he's at, and she kind of wants people to know that she's there, that she's looking for Grave. And she finds him in another tavern, though, and hunts him down. She finally corners him, and he thinks he's gonna win. He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get this girl this time. She embarrassed me last time, no, I'm gonna get her. But he doesn't know Celaena. She's got it all under a wild control. She's wild, but she definitely knows how to control those wild emotions, like in an untamed way. It's very weird to describe, but she knows how to work it. But we find out that someone hired him to kill Nehemia. Celaena then wants to torture and kill him, and she does. And she brings his head to the king as he's having a meeting with his councilman and tells him that Minister Mullison hired him to kill Nehemia, who is there, by the way. Minister Mullison is in the meeting, and they take Minister Mullison into custody. So after that, Celaena visits Archer, and he asks her to help their cause, basically wants her to help with what him and Nehemia were doing, but she reiterates her warning and gives him 5 days. Now we do get a scene with Chaol and his father, and this kind of shows their tumultuous relationship. Chaol's father basically wants him back in Aniel, where he's from, but Chaol doesn't want to go, and we kind of get like he just doesn't want to be near his father. There's kind of this continual thing of sons and fathers and their rocky relationships, and so this is just another one to just flesh out that theme. So Celaena begins to go through Nehemia's stuff, and she's helping pack it and all that stuff to send it back to Elwë, to her family. And that's when she comes across the book from Davis's office. It has symbols in it that's been drawn. It says not to trust. The symbols say not to trust, and then there's a final symbol. It's a mystery, although it looks like a wyvern, which is the royal seal. That's their mascot, basically. And that's when something clicks in Celaena's head. She goes back down to the tomb and realizes that the key wasn't the necklace, but the sword was. It reveals a poem. It says, by the Valg 3 were made, of the gatestone of the word. Obsidian the gods forbade, and the stone they greatly feared. In grief he hid one in the crown, of her he loved so well, to keep with her where she laid down inside the starry cell. The second one was hidden in a mountain made of fire, where all men were forbidden, despite their great desires. Where the third lies will never be told, by voice or tongue, or sum of gold. So there's that. And that's a lot to unpack, but we won't unpack it right yet. So Celaena learns that Nehemia had also been in the tomb before, which, like, okay, Nehemia, you lied again. And that's when Celaena finally breaks down crying, and Elena appears, and she sits beside her and comforts her. Now this is when Celaena finally finds the courage to go to Nehemia's grave, her temporary grave, because she'll be sent down to Elwë, to her final resting place, and she says her goodbyes. Now Chaol is off in the distance and hears her singing something in a different language. Not any language that he's heard before or he's familiar with, but after she sings, she sees him. And he tries to say something to her, but she ignores him. Her grief is too much, and Chaol realizes that this will be a punishment for him not telling her.